Hey guys, Joe here with Local Pro Helper, and in this video I'm going to go over the 5 mistakes that most contractors make according to what I see in Facebook groups and just in life in general. Okay, so, and more importantly, we're going to show you how to correct them so that way you can put more money in your pocket as well as actually being home more. So we're going to get away from you having to work 60, 70, 80 hours a week and get you closer to, between 20 and 40 pretty quickly. Okay. So first thing is who I am. Picture of myself and my son Jaden. And basically I started my fence company in June of 2015, and I pretty much didn't have any experience when it came to fences. Now I did put a fence in around my pool, which was just an aluminum fence. It was maybe 14 sections, and that I learned pretty much just by YouTube videos and the instructions that they had. So the first 3 years were kind of a mess. We were able to go from about $250,000 in sales to about $1 million in sales. So, for most companies, that's pretty good. But the only issue is that I was working 80 hours a week. And then the other issue is I wasn't all that profitable because I didn't understand pricing. I didn't understand how to be more productive and more efficient. And basically I was just wasting a lot of money on different forms of advertising that weren't working, and just other things that just led to a business that just wasn't running that well. And by year 5, and actually it was year 4 where I started to make some headway and make some adjustments, but I really started to see the effects in year 5. Basically what I was able to do was, not only cut my hours down to about 15 minutes a day, but I was able to, increase my profit by 30%. So I was making a hell of a lot more than I was before and, putting it in my pocket, even though my sales weren't increasing as much. But I was able to not work as much. So I was able to enjoy time with family and friends, but actually be able to pay the bills without, checking my account every other day. Okay. And then today, so what I want to do is show you the small changes that I personally made and some suggestions I had for each of the 5 mistakes that I see you making, and hopefully that will help you. And the best part is what I'm going to show you, you can implement immediately. These aren't things that change your entire business. It's literally small changes that you can make that will make a big difference. Okay, so there's 2 reasons why most companies are struggling. Okay, and it's only 2. The first reason is the owner isn't aware of the solution to their problem, because after all, most of us started a business because we were just trying to make more money. We didn't come from a Harvard background. We didn't go to college for this stuff. We just happened to know how to do something, and then we turned that into a business. Okay. The other reason that companies are struggling is because the owner isn't willing to make the necessary changes. And what ends up happening a lot of times is I can tell someone till I'm blue in the face of how they can fix their company easily, but unless they want to make that change, I can't do anything for that. And the reason why I think most people don't make the changes is, one, because it's your baby. So you spend all the time and everything else trying to get this business together, and you're afraid of anything falling apart because after all, it's your baby. And the other reason is that you have, you rely on this for a lot of times your only income. So you're not going to be willing to make any changes if you're going to screw something up. Okay. And then what we have at the bottom is basically, I can show you the way, but I can't make you take the action. Now, luckily at the end, I'm going to show you a program that will actually show you what's going to happen to your business before you make any changes. Okay. And not only just for your business, but also for your personal life as well, which is just as important. Okay. So mistake number 1 is you're working more than 40 hours. Okay. This is pretty much everyone. At the end of the day, the goal of the business is so that way you can profit from the business, not so that the business dictates your entire life. Now, the key thing to remember is successful business owners differ in one way, and that is that they leverage the time and talents of other people. Okay, so you can't rely on just yourself to do everything, because if you came from another business and you knew how to do fencing, because I do fencing. So if you came from a fencing background and you think that you can run a business and just do all the fencing yourself and make all the money, well, you could try to do that, but the problem is now you're not only just doing the fencing, but you have to answer the phone calls, the emails, and everything else. So what used to be a 40, 50 hour a week job you still have that job, but then on top of that, you still have to do the quotes, the emails, the phone calls, everything else. So it goes from a 40-hour or 50-hour week job to like 70 and 80 hours a week. Yeah, you're making a little bit more money, but you're also putting in like 20 and 30 hours more a week. And, typically what happens is you're making minimum wage on those extra hours, and you're putting out a lot of, responsibility and, everything else. You're risking a lot and not getting a lot in return. Okay, so the one solution that you can do is you start delegating some of your responsibilities. So if you already have employees, then you start just asking them to do more for you. It's little things. I'm not saying to hand off the entire business or anything like that. It's little things. So again, as a fence company, how many hours a week are you spending on like 811 calls? Even if it's just an hour a week, well, train someone else to do that. That's something very simple. Or, can you train someone to go out to do the quotes for you? Or can you, have one of them start answering the phones? Whatever it may be, have them start doing that instead. Or maybe it's getting the materials ready. Maybe it's loading up the concrete, whatever it is, have someone else start doing that for you. But the key here is that you have to delegate this. You can't abdicate, which basically means, delegate is where you hand it off to someone else and then you follow up, where abdicate is where you basically just hand it off and then it's like you never look at it ever again. And that's just not going to work. So as long as you give it off to someone, you train them how to do it, and you follow up, life is good. Now, are they going to make mistakes? 100%. They will make mistakes. And reason for that is you did the same thing too. They don't know any better. You have to train them. So that's a little bit of the headache up front, but then you reap the rewards in the later on in life. The next thing you can do is automate your processes. This is what I'm really good at. This is what I've spent a lot of my time and attention on lately for the past probably 18 months is, I'm trying to take a fence company and bring them into the 21st century. And my, the model I look at is Amazon. How easy does Amazon make everything for their customers? And that's what I'm trying to do. I'm trying to get basically my long game is having a customer that goes from finding us to booking their install with us without even talking to us. So that's what we're doing. So you could automate things such as emails and phone calls and everything else, or text messages, whatever. There's a program for pretty much everything out there at this point. So if you can automate something, just start doing that. The next thing is you can charge for estimates. Okay, so this, a lot of people are going to just say no to this immediately, but for my personal company, and you can see here, we used to do 60 quotes a week easily. So we had to drive to every single person, took about an hour for each one. So it was about 60 hours a week we were spending. So it was either myself or I had to pay someone else to do it. Along with that, you have to pay for the gas and the maintenance on the vehicle and everything else. And the crazy part is, even though it was going to 60, I would book like, 8 jobs. Okay. Now, what happens is we charge $75 to go out. So, typically we go out to about 8 to 10 quotes, and we will book about 8 of those jobs. So we're booking just as many jobs, but we're only going to a fraction of the quotes. We basically had a quote guy that would go out Monday through Friday from like 7 in the morning was the first one. And then the last one was like 5 o'clock. So like 10 hours a day, he was going out every single day, 5 days a week. And then sometimes on Saturdays. And then there was other days where we had him working, until 7, 8 o'clock at night. Now we do 1 day of quotes, and that's it. That's it. Obviously, you have to give them a price over the phone first or through email. And for fencing, it's easy. But for everyone else, like if you're doing remodels or something like that, I'm sure you know about how much something would cost if you just talk to them, or if there's a range. So if like there's a, for remodels again, if there's a builder grade, then a mid grade, and then like the high grade, magazine quality. Well, just give them a price based on each one. If it's, based upon what you're saying, sir, for builder grade, you're looking somewhere around 10 to 15,000. For mid grade, 25 to 45, and then knock your socks off. It's looking at a minimum of $50,000. And then from there, if they're okay with that, then you say, we can still come out, but just to let you know, it's going to cost $75 for us to come out. However, if you move forward, that price of the quote gets rolled into the project. It's simple. A lot of people think they can't do it. You can do it. Mistake number 2, wearing too many hats. So the solution for that is, first one is same thing. Start delegating some of the responsibility to someone else. Same as the mistake number 1. The other another one is automate your tasks. Same thing. If you notice, there's going to be a correlation between most of what you have to do. Okay, just automate what you have to do. If it's sending emails or whatever else, there's ways to get around that now. Like, we're in the 21st century. Mistake number 3, you still are providing the actual service. So again, I own a fence company, so that would be like me actually installing the fences. Now, why is this a problem? Well, if you're working in the business, you can't work on the business. So basically, if you're providing the service, you can't figure out ways to improve your business. That's what I was doing for the first few years. And what would happen is you're constantly working the same amount of hours. You're constantly bringing home the same amount of money, which usually is not enough. It's just barely enough. And, nothing gets any better. But as soon as you are able to start handing off some of the tasks to someone else, then you can start actually, working on the business. It's the biggest thing I've ever done. And, because of that, I went from 80 hours a week down to 15 minutes a day. Okay. The first thing is you can start training your helpers to move up the ranks. So, again, with fencing, typically we run in 2-man teams. We have a foreman and we have a helper. Well, the only thing you have to do is that helper, you start talking to them and moving them up into a foreman position. You get them ready for that. At the same time, you're bringing in the helper. And what I typically do is the foreman trains the helper because they're going to be working together. And then after that, I basically cross-train the helper as well, make sure everything's good. And then we put them off on their own. Obviously, we're double checking up on them. You can do some kind of probationary period or something like that. But basically, the goal is you have to constantly be moving people up. Because the other thing you got to think about is, what happens if something happens to you? COVID is a great example. What happens if you get sick with COVID and you're out for 2 weeks? If your business can't run without you, like, what's going to happen? Like, this is a real, like, I know there's a lot of controversy and everything else, but this is a very real threat that you have to think about. And it could be anything else. It could be, last year I was just helping with the warehouse, like cleaning up or something. And I was getting off my forklift. And at the time I had already injured my ankle like 6 months before that. And just the way I jumped off the forklift, and I think it was my shoes too, I broke my ankle. Now, if I still had to install the fences, like, I'd be screwed. Like, I would be losing thousands of dollars a week because I was still installing. But because I have other people, it was okay. So just be careful. The next thing, hire subs. Now, before this year, I would have never said this because for me, I didn't want another outside company to deal with. I wanted everything in-house and everything else. But what I found is, and it was because I was talking to another fence guy down in Florida, he's like, just hire subs, because what the issue I was having is I just didn't have enough staff. We were too busy with COVID and everything else. I ended up finding a really great guy. He does excellent work. He is like kind of the same mindset as me. We started with 1 crew last year. He's adding a 2nd crew on for me this year. And like, because of that, it's just less that, well, now it's for us, it's more work we can put in. But if you were to hire a sub, now you don't have to do the work for yourself. Now you're just focusing on answering the phone calls, emails, and selling jobs. It's much easier. Now you're going to make less per job? 100% yes. But you're also going to gain so much more time in return. So do that. The final thing is to reduce the low profit or time sucking jobs. So what happens in any business is you're going to offer multiple services. So even as a fence company, I offer multiple services. I install vinyl, chain link, aluminum, cedar, pressure treated. I do repairs. We could do commercial or industrial work. Like, there's a lot of different services. What you're going to find is there's only 1 or 2 services that bring you in the most amount of money and take the least amount of your time. What you have to do is find out which is which, and then, separate them, and then start focusing on getting more of the most profitable jobs that take you the least amount of time. And then that will allow you to go from like 80 hours a week down to 60 pretty quickly. Now, I'm not saying to get rid of, the least profitable jobs in the beginning, because no one's going to do that. But you just have to start, lowering it little by little. So if right now your unprofitable jobs, you do them 50% of the time, try to get it down to 40% and then 30 and 20 and 10. And then finally you just phase it out. It's what we've personally done. And because of that, we make more money per day than we've ever done. And there's less issues because of that. Because the other issue too with running, the mobile services is that there's just more headaches to deal with. There's more issues that can happen. And, it just makes your business harder to run. Okay, and then the 4th one is stop doing custom jobs. So I see this all the time in the Facebook groups for the fencing industry. And, the guys are super proud that they're doing this extravagant work, or it's like these one-off jobs and everything else. And that's great. But the problem is that you still have to be physically involved. And then again, like, if you're doing these custom jobs, who is actually focusing on the business to make it, to improve it so that way it becomes more profitable and so you don't have to work as much? Well, the answer is no one. And that's why, get rid of custom jobs. Now, most people will think, well, if I stop doing the custom jobs, or if I reduce the amount of low profit or, time sucking jobs, it's less money I'm going to make. But that's not true, because if you would search in your area, like there's keyword finder tools, which basically means, well, I can know how many people every month search for a fence company in South Jersey. And in my answer, like for the areas I service, there's over 2,000 people a month searching for a fence company. So there's plenty of work out there. You just have to get your head around that there's always work. It's just you have to find it, or they have to find you. Okay. Mistake number 4, you don't have any plans in place. So, as it says, if you fail to plan, you plan to fail. And, what happens most of the time is if you're in this shitty situation where you're not making enough money, but you're killing yourself every day, well, it's never going to change unless you make plans for it. Okay. It's as simple as that. So the solution, and it's simple, and this is what I personally do, and it's made a big difference, is you figure out what you want. So you figure out what your needs are for the business. So you figure out all the expenses, and it's pretty quick. You figure out your budget for the year. So you figure out like how much your employees cost, minus the ones that are actually installing the fence or whatever service you provide. So the people that like answer the phone calls and emails, whatever else if you have them. Then you're figuring out like what your business expenses are, as far as like the warehouse, if you have any vehicles, the insurance payments, the vehicle payments, like all that kind of stuff, phone bill, whatever. You figure out a number for that. And then you go for your personal side as well and figure out what you need for your personal life. So what's your food bill? What's your mortgage bill? What's your gas and electric? How much do you want to save every year? How much do you want to save for vacations? How much do you want to save for investments? Whatever. You come up with a number. And then from there, with that number, you can figure out how many jobs you need to book for a week, how many, jobs for the month, all that kind of stuff. And it just makes it super simple. And again, at the end of this, I'm going to show you the Profit Planner program, and I'll show you how that works for this. Number 5, and I've mentioned this already, is you offer too many services. So again, if we offered, vinyl, aluminum, cedar, pressure treated, chain link, commercial, industrial, everything else, there's just too many running parts. The key for this is you basically need to just pick one or two services that you do and really start maximizing them. So not only do you start really advertising for them or bringing in more jobs for them, but then you also figure out ways to be more, be more productive and, be more efficient. So what'll end up happening is, you might only make, just say, I'm throwing out numbers, but like most services, you might make $1,000 per day. Whatever. Well, once you start only focusing on one or two of them, then you start figuring out how to be more efficient, or you can start buying in bulk because you're only doing those two services instead of a million different things. And because of that, you go from like 1,000, a day to 11 to 1,200 to 1,500. Like this is what we did. We went from averaging about $1,000 per day per crew to now we're at about 1,700. And that's because 1, we raised our pricing, and then 2, we also just figured out ways to become more efficient, and then also we're able to buy in bulk because we're narrowed down what we provide. It's as simple as that. Okay. So the first thing to know is the 80-20 rule. So this has been proven time and time again. And basically what it says is that 80% of your results are going to come from 20% of your effort. Or in this case, 80% of your profit comes 20% of your services. So what you're going to see is that 1 or 2 services out of the 5 or 6 that you provide, again, make you way more money and cost you way less time. Your goal is to figure out what they are and then start maximizing towards it. And again, in the program, I'm going to show you how to do that. Okay, and again here, you're just figuring out what service is profitable and take the least amount of your time and then just focus on them. Again, you're not trying to eliminate everything else, in the beginning. If your 50% is the really profitable stuff and the 50% is the unprofitable stuff, well, get it down to like 60-40 and then 70-30, 80-20, and just keep on going and going till you just do whatever's most profitable for your company. It's that simple. I know this stuff sounds like I'm making it sound too simple, but it's literally that simple. Okay, so what now? Basically, I have 2 options. You could, if you have issues within your business, you could, just keep wishing that things are going to get better. But just know that, like, the definition of insanity is doing the same things over and over and expecting a different result. And it's no different than this. If you're not making money now and you're already working 80 hours a week, you can't really work any harder. So you have to do things differently. The other thing you can do is just start making small changes to correct your business. Like, it's literally small changes, and I'm about to show you that here. Okay, and again, all this is easy if you basically had a guide that kind of walked you by the hand and did it for you. And I'm about to show you a program that will do exactly that. Okay, So let's get out of there and let's open up a new tab. I have a million different browsers. So it's called the Profit Planner app. Okay. So what I did is this program is very easy. The first thing you're going to do is set up your business and personal expenses. This is what I was talking about earlier. So I just made up some random numbers. Obviously, I'm not spending $400,000 a year on office supplies, but I just wanted to throw in numbers so I can get like a pretty big number. So we're going to pretend that I need about $444,000, for my business every year. Again, this does not include, the people that are actually installing whatever service you do. Okay. The next thing you're going to do is figure out your personal expenses. Again, I was just throwing in random stuff to make it quicker. I'm not spending $150,000 a year on groceries, but you get the idea. It's easy as this. Like you literally pick what you have to do. So like lawn care, if it's a weekly payment of 35 bucks, you put that, you save it, you refresh, and then I'll show you here, lawn care, it's 35 bucks a week, $150 a month, $18.20 a year. Easy as that, okay? So we came up with a random number of $176,000. The next thing you're gonna do is you're gonna go into the rates. So this is important because this is going to, when you start delegating some of your responsibility, this is where you're gonna put how much it would cost you if someone was gonna do it for you, okay? Now, the important thing to remember is whatever you're paying that person per hour, you wanna add 40%. Why are you adding 40%? Because this is gonna add in all the, like the labor taxes, the unemployment, the workman's comp, all that stuff, okay? So if you're paying Sally 20 bucks to answer the phone an hour, well, you're adding 40%, so it's really 28. Okay, so you would do that with each thing. Now, the next thing we're gonna do is your jobs, okay? So you could do one of two things in the beginning. You can basically put in every single job if you want, track everything individually, or you can basically do an average, which I kind of did for these last three that we're gonna run reports off of. So for this, I did one for aluminum, one for cedar, one for vinyl, okay? And I'm going to show you how simple this is, but basically it breaks down the price for each job on average, the average materials, the labor, it'll show you what the profit is, the profit percent, all that kind of good stuff, okay? And let's do one real quick. So we're going to do, you can click add a new job, and then we'll just put in like this, okay? You can put in name if you want, but I'll just leave it. And you would pick the job type. Obviously with yours, you would just hit add new because you're probably not going to do mine, but we'll do chain link. Okay, so this, we're going to pretend that the average price of the job is $7,500, and the materials cost us $2,500, and the labor is $1,500. And then total, let's say it's going to take us a day and a half to install. Okay, and referred by, you can put any of these, or you can actually add your own as well. And the reason why we're doing this is so you can figure out like where your money's coming from. So if you're spending money on ads, like where, which ones are actually producing the money for you. So you can, spend more money on them instead of the other ones. Okay. So what you'll know right away after you're done is that our total profit was $3,500, which is great. The profit percent was 46.67%. And then the daily profit is 23.33. Okay. Let me get this stuff out of here. So the next thing what you're going to do is you're going to put in your personal time that you spend for this job. Now this doesn't include like your laborers and everything like that. It's only for your personal time. The reason why we're only tracking your personal time is because the goal for your business is to make more money and to work less hours. So that's where we're tracking the money up here. We're tracking your hours down here so we can make adjustments. Okay. So the phone calls, let's pretend you're on the phone for 30 minutes total. For the email conversations, let's say 15 minutes. On-site estimate. So if you still go out to every house and you, without pre-qualifying or anything like that, you're going to put how much time you spent. But the thing you got to remember is how much time you spent driving there, while you were there, and then getting back. Okay. So if it took 30 minutes to get there, 30 minutes to get back, and you were there for 30 minutes, well then you put 90 here. How long does it take you to put the proposal together and send it? How long does it take you to order the materials? Now, if you're still picking up the materials and driving it to the location, how long does that take? Again, you want to figure in everything if you're personally doing it. Let's put 90. Installation. So if you were still installing the jobs and you were there for a day and a half, you figure, 8 days to, let's just round the number. So we'll pretend 10 hours total. Okay, so 600. Or actually, let's do 15 hours because we were there a day and a half. Okay, so 900 minutes. Final payment if you had to go back. Advertising. So this is like if you spent time posting on Facebook or if you're doing door hangers, something like that, how much time did it take you? And we'll put 20 minutes. Okay. Now with this information, we know we spent about almost 20 hours and we were making about $177 per hour. Okay. And then also you can put the completion date when you're done, and that'll track other things for you, but we're going to save that. Okay. Now, what we're going to do is, first thing we're going to do is the business pulse. This is just going to show you what happened to your business in a nutshell. So I put everything yesterday, so I'm just going to leave it as yesterday. We submit it. So what you'll see here is your total sales for the day or that time period. It'll break everything down. So for the job type, it'll say aluminum. It'll break down how many total sales and all that kind of stuff. Again, I just did an average with this so we can figure out what job type is going to be our best option. Okay. It'll break it down like total profit, profit percent, average hours, gross hourly rate. Okay. And if you notice here right away is if we were just trying to figure out what's our most profitable, well, aluminum, if you look at this, aluminum we made 3,000, this we made 2,000, and this we made 2,500. So they're all about the same. But when you come over to here, you notice that we're working way more hours for the cedar installation. So in this case, it might be if like you have no one to install for you, so you're doing it all your own. But if you look here, you know, aluminum I'm making $205 an hour, but the cedar, I'm only making $104 an hour. I'm basically making half as much by still providing this. So this is a perfect example where I say, you know what, if you're doing like 50% aluminum, 30% cedar, and 20% vinyl, well, the goal right now, because of these numbers, is to start limiting the amount of cedar installations that you're doing. You don't have to completely eliminate it, but you just do that. The next thing is for these are for the sales and then the installations. So I didn't put that we installed any for this date, so that's why nothing's showing up here. And then down here, it'll break down the averages for everything. And you can see why you're spending so much more time in one thing than another, okay? So for the cedar installation, if you go through, everything's pretty much the same, like same. And it's here. It's because all our time is spent for the installation, okay? So the next thing is we're going to look at the future planner. So this is where you can actually see what small changes you have to make or you can make and what they would do for you and your business. Okay. So again, I'm going to keep it with the 12th just because that's when all the information was entered. And we'll do all. And first thing we're going to do, click that, profit adjuster. So what is this? So this is basically what would happen if you started raising your pricing. So because we picked the date range and all, it took the average of the jobs I put in, and here's everything how it looks out. And the average percent is 33%, which is low. So let's pretend we're going to raise that to 38% and see what that does. Okay. So if we raise it to 38%, basically we're going to make an extra $350 per job. So that means we went from charging $7,500 to $7,850. So in the grand scheme of things, it's really not that much. It's less than 10%. It's like 5%. So this is very easily done, right? So then if we look here, if we want to work less hours, you follow this. If you want to just make more money and work the same amount of hours, you do this. So look at this. Before we needed, based upon our business expenses, personal expenses, and the average profit per job, then we have to hit just under 5 jobs per week. And then because we changed our pricing, now we only have to hit like 4.25. So we're saving ourselves about half a job a week or about 30 jobs a year. Okay, let me slide myself over. Now the next part that's really interesting is the current hours per week. Based upon our expenses and everything else, sorry about the dogs, we need to work 76 hours a week to make, you know, enough for the business and the personal side, okay? But because we raise our prices, now we're going down to 67 hours a week. We saved ourselves almost 9.5 hours and about 492 hours per year. Like, this is huge, right? You see this right away. Like, this small change will make this big change to you. Like, that's like what I'm trying to say is small. There's a quote that I heard from someone. It's small hinges swing big doors. It's like this. These small changes make big changes to your life. Okay. So what could you do with that extra 492 hours? Okay. Fishing, golfing, hunting, like whatever. Spending time with family, whatever you want to do. Now, if you're okay with still working 76 hours a week, but you just want to pump in the same amount of jobs and everything else, but just charge a little bit more, what's going to end up happening is you're going to end up making almost $1,500 more a week in profit, or about $76,000 a year, just because you raise your prices by a little bit. Okay. Next thing, the weekly hour adjuster. Now this is kind of like the same thing. So right now, based upon the date range, the averages and everything else, we need to book about 5 jobs a week, and we're going to work 76 hours a week to do that, right? So what if we said, you know what, I need to make more money. I'm not going to raise my prices, but I just want to work harder. What would happen if I worked 80 hours a week, or, you know, whatever, we'll do 80 hours a week. Now it's not much more, but it's a little bit. So what would happen is by working an extra like 3.5 hours a week, well, I'm going to make an extra $546 a week, or about $28,000 a year. You could also do this on the flip side of, if you're currently working 76 hours a week and you don't need to work that much, like you have enough money, what would happen if you go to 60 hours a week? Well, it'll show you here is that you went from 76 to 60. Well, now you're making $2,700 less a week, or $140,000 a year. Now, for most people, this isn't an option, but there are several owners that are killing themselves every day, and they make way more than enough money for themselves and their family and their business, but just don't realize, like, they are scared to work any less. But this will show you that you can work less. Okay. The job hour adjuster. Okay, so this one is really important for the people that are currently doing everything on their own, or I should specify that are actually still installing that service. Because what we're looking at is everything's based upon the date range and the job type. But these are the average hours that I'm working, which is a total of 16 hours per job. And if you look down here, the biggest one is your installation. It's 700 minutes of your time for every job is going to this. Okay. For this, we're going to pretend that we hired a sub or someone else to do the installation for us. So we're going to change this to 0. Watch what happens. So what happens, and again, this 0, because we're taking 700 minutes off, it's taking the rate that you put in at the other screen, and basically it's going to cost you an extra $326 for that person. Okay? Which seems like a lot. But before we were working about 5 jobs a week. Now, because we hired that person, now we have to make or book 5.5 jobs per week. So, it's 0.7 per week, or about 37 jobs more per year. Now, when, for us, we do 350, 400 jobs a year to begin with. So adding, for me to add an extra 30 jobs, it's really not that big of a deal in the grand scheme of things. Okay. But here's the really crazy part. We went from 76 hours down to 24 hours just because we had someone install it for us. And you see here, we only have to book an extra, not even a job a week to pay for that person. You're saving yourself 52 hours a week. Like, this is huge. This is absolutely huge. Okay. And if you noticed before, you're making about 170 bucks an hour. Well, now you're making about $500 an hour because you're 3 times more productive than you were before. Okay. If nothing else makes you change, I just don't know what else is going to do it for you. The next thing is the expense adjuster. Do for all. So what this will show you is what you're currently spending for your business and your personal expenses. And let's say, for advertising, we're spending 24 grand, but we want to up that to $48,000. Okay, so we'll change this to 48,000. What you'll see over here, or we can pretend that extra 24,000 was for a warehouse, 2 grand a month, whatever. So you'll see here that the total cost was $24,000 for the year, and the current jobs per week, you went from needing, same thing, about 5 jobs per week to 5 jobs per week. You're going to need an extra 9 jobs per year to pay for this extra $24,000. And then from here, if you change nothing else and, your current hours per week is 77, you're going to about 80. So you're working a little less than 3 more hours a week to be able to pay for that warehouse or to be able to pay for that advertising or whatever it may be. So for this, you can decide if it's going to be worth your time or not. Or on the flip side, it's like, well, before I was spending, 24,000 here, and like, what if I just want to cut that off completely? Like, how much time am I going to save myself? And here, same thing. You're really not saving yourself much. Actually, it's the same numbers, but you save yourself 10 jobs per year, which is nothing. But now you don't have really any advertising. And then you save 3 hours a week, which is nothing. So in my opinion, keep on spending on further advertising, because then you can actually charge more, because the more leads you have in, the more you can end up charging because of that. Next thing is the advertising adjuster. So here, if you're currently paying for advertising, and this is going to be really helpful. Okay. So right now, if you're advertising and it costs you about $35 for every time someone calls you, and that it's going to cost you about 15 leads in order to book a job, you put that in here. So what this shows for the people that aren't advertising, this is helpful, is your average value per job is $2,500. If you spend $35 per lead and it takes you 15 leads, it's going to cost you $525. And because of that, you go from a $2,500 profit to a $1,975, which in the beginning you're thinking, there's no way in hell I would spend $525 on a customer, right? But if you put in that you're willing to spend $2,000 a month, And let's pretend that you hired the subcontractors like I mentioned. Well, what'll happen now, because you're spending $2,000 a month, you're going to make an estimated $7,500 more per month, or about $90,000 per year, just because you spent more on advertising. And again, if you listen to me and start hiring subs or start promoting your own crews, all you're doing is, at that point, you just have to sell more jobs. And because of that, you're going to put like an extra $90,000 in your pocket. It gets this simple, okay? The final thing, the job type adjuster. Now, this is good for the people that offer multiple different services, and you want to see what happens if you slowly start phasing out something, what it'll do for your bottom line, and also what it'll do for your hours, right? So here we have our aluminum installation, cedar, and vinyl. Right now, because I only did one for each one, everything's equal, so 33% across the board. Okay, here it shows you what your average profit is, and I'll show you what your total hours is. So again, based on this, we want to get rid of cedar as quickly as possible. So let's pretend that we got rid of cedar and we did only vinyl and aluminum. And for vinyl and aluminum, let's say we did like 70% for vinyl, or aluminum, and 30% for, oops, there we go, 30% for vinyl, and we left this at 0. What's going to happen is again, we need about 5 jobs per week originally. Well, because we started phasing out the cedar, we only need about 4 jobs per week. So we saved ourselves 30 jobs per week. Okay, now here's the important thing. We went from having to work 76 hours a week down to 60 hours a week. We saved ourselves 15 hours for the week and 818 hours for the year. So this is super important because, again, if you are going to, figure out what's actually profitable, the most profitable, you figure out what's going to take you the most amount of hours, and then you start just strategically just focusing on getting more aluminum jobs. So maybe that's not advertising for cedar anymore. It's only advertising for aluminum, or it's only advertising for vinyl, whatever it may be. And then from there, if you start phasing out the least profitable or the one that takes the most amount of hours, well, what happens is you end up needing less jobs per year. And then because of that, you end up working way less. It's that simple. Like, everything's this simple. So I hope you enjoyed everything. If you're interested in a profit planner, you can click the link below, and then that will take you to it. At the time of this recording, it's only $7 a month. Like, that's it. It will track all your jobs for you. It will track the jobs that you sold, the jobs that you completed, so you can figure out like how you're going on both sides of the coin. And then also, like you see, you can actually start using this to make plans within your business, and you can figure out what changes you need to make or what changes you can make and what it would do for your business before you started doing it, because that seems what's holding most contractors back. They don't know how their business is going to change, and they don't want to screw anything up, so they just keep on doing the same thing every day, but that leads them to working 80 hours a week, and that leads them to not making enough money. But if you knew what would happen, you're more likely to do it, and that's why I built this program. So I hope you have a great day, and good luck with everything. Thanks.